I'm Amber Wilson, 29, a marketing specialist from Boston who moved back home 2 years ago after my dad's sudden heart attack. I wanted to help Mom cope with her grief and the mountain of bills. My sister Madison lives in California and rarely calls. We've never been close. Last week, Madison called saying she was coming home for family support. I was cautiously hopeful. Maybe we could finally become the close family I've always wanted. Before I continue the story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button because this family drama is about to show you that sometimes the people who should love you the most are the ones who hurt you deepest. The moment Madison announced her visit, my mother transformed our home. I hadn't seen her this energetic since before Dad's funeral. She scrubbed every surface until the house smelled perpetually of lemon and bleach. She dug through old recipe books to prepare all of Madison's childhood favorites, the elaborate pasta dishes and homemade apple pies that never appeared when it was just me at home. "Your sister loves my lasagna," Mom said, carefully layering the pasta. "I need to get the ingredients for her favorite chocolate chip cookies too." I nodded and continued chopping vegetables. "Need any help with anything else?" I asked, even though I'd already taken the day off work to assist with preparations. "Could you clean the guest room?" I want it to be perfect for Madison. The guest room, which was actually my old bedroom before I'd moved into the smaller space downstairs after coming home. Growing up, the differences between Madison and me couldn't have been more obvious. For years my senior, Madison was the embodiment of everything I wasn't: stunning, confident, socially adept. Her blonde hair always fell in perfect waves, unlike my straight brown locks that refused to hold a curl. In high school, she was the cheerleading captain dating the quarterback while I was in debate club and the photography group. Our parents attended every one of her games, but somehow always had conflicts during my tournaments. I spent that entire day helping Mom prepare for Madison's arrival, cleaning, shopping, cooking, all while juggling remote work calls during my supposed day off. By evening, the house looked magazine perfect, with fresh flowers on the entry table and Madison's childhood photos prominently displayed. When the doorbell rang at 7 p.m., Mom practically sprinted to answer it. Madison stood in the doorway, designer sunglasses perched on her head, pulling two expensive leather suitcases behind her. Her smile was dazzling, just like in her Instagram posts. "Mom," she squealed, dropping her bags and embracing our mother. "I've missed you so much." Mom held her tight, tears streaming down her face. "My beautiful girl is finally home." I stood awkwardly in the background until Madison spotted me. "Little sister," she exclaimed, giving me a quick hug that smelled of an exclusive perfume I could never afford. "Look at you, still rocking that same hairstyle from college." I forced a smile. "Good to see you too, Madison. How was your flight?" "Awful." The guy next to me wouldn't stop talking, and they ran out of sparkling water. Honestly, I don't know why I didn't just upgrade to first class. Dinner was a nostalgic affair, with Mom continuously filling Madison's plate and hanging on her every word about California life. Madison spoke animatedly about parties with minor celebrities, her beachfront apartment, and her marketing director position at a cosmetics company. "It's been a bit of a difficult time lately," she mentioned vaguely when Mom asked about work. "The industry is so cutthroat. But let's not talk about that. Tell me about what's been happening here." The way she said "here" made our hometown sound like a quaint, backward village she'd escaped. "Amber's been such a help," Mom said, patting my hand. "She's good with the bills and household things." Madison smiled without reaching her eyes. "Always the responsible one. Meanwhile, I'm living the dream in LA." She quickly changed the subject. "Is that a new TV? The one in my old room still working? I brought some movies I thought we could watch together." Throughout dinner, I noticed how Mom deferred to Madison on everything, from what music to play to whether we should have coffee after dinner. It was like watching a rehearsed dance they'd perfected years ago, with me as the audience. Later that night, after helping Mom clean up while Madison freshened up upstairs, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Despite the subtle jabs and the familiar feeling of being second best, I still felt hopeful. Madison had come home. We were together as a family again. Maybe this was our chance to heal old wounds and become closer. As I drifted off to sleep, I pushed away the nagging feeling that Madison's sudden return might not be the blessing it appeared to be. A week after Madison's arrival, our home had transformed in ways I hadn't anticipated. The living room had become Madison's personal space, with her laptop, magazines, beauty products, and clothes draped over every surface. Her conference calls echoed through the house at all hours, her voice shifting between saccharine sweetness and sharp irritation. "This place is so outdated," Madison remarked one morning while I made coffee before work. She gestured broadly at the kitchen my dad had remodeled just 3 years earlier. "Mom should really consider granite countertops. And these cabinets? So last decade." I bit my tongue. Dad designed this kitchen himself. Madison rolled her eyes. Well, interior design clearly wasn't his forte. Her casual dismissal of our father's memory stung, but I let it slide. This had become my daily routine, swallowing small hurts to maintain peace. Each day, Mom seemed increasingly drawn into Madison's orbit. They went shopping together, had girl talks that fell silent when I entered the room, and reminisced about memories that conveniently excluded me. When I returned from work, I'd often find them laughing over wine, my presence an interruption to their exclusive club. "Amber, don't you have anything besides those boring pantsuits for work?" Madison asked during one such evening. "Your style is so corporate." "I am corporate," I replied. "Marketing strategy requires a professional appearance." "Marketing strategy," Madison scoffed. "You're basically making PowerPoints for insurance companies. In LA, marketing means creative campaigns for brands people actually care about." Mom nodded along. Madison's always had such a good eye for these things. Later that week, I discovered the truth about Madison's sudden return while overhearing her heated phone conversation from the garden. "They can't just replace me like that," she hissed. "I built that department from nothing." "Fine, whatever, I don't need that toxic environment anyway. My subletter better not damage anything in the apartment before I get back." "No, I didn't tell them I was fired. They think I'm just here for family time." The pieces clicked into place. Madison hadn't come home for family support. She'd lost her job and apartment and needed a place to stay. The realization made me angry, not because she needed help, but because of the dishonesty. That evening, I confronted her while Mom was out grocery shopping. "I know you lost your job, Madison. Why not just be honest about needing a place to stay?" Her expression hardened. "Been eavesdropping, little sister? Always the sneaky one." It wasn't intentional, but I heard enough. "Mom would understand if you just told her the truth." "Mind your own business," she snapped. "Besides, this arrangement is temporary. I have interviews lined up with much better companies." As days passed, Madison's presence expanded throughout the house. I returned from work one day to find my books and personal items had been moved to make room for her excess clothing. My bathroom shelf had been taken over by her expensive skincare products. Even the refrigerator was now stocked exclusively with her preferred organic foods and kombucha drinks. More troubling was the financial situation. I discovered Mom had spent nearly $800 on a shopping spree with Madison, money that should have gone toward the property tax bill. "Mom, we agreed to be careful with spending this month," I said gently as she showed me Madison's new designer dress. "Oh," Madison needed cheering up. "It's just this once." The next day, Mom casually mentioned that the utility bill was higher than expected and asked if I could chip in a bit more this month. I was already contributing 70% of the household expenses, while Madison contributed nothing. The inequity was becoming impossible to ignore. The final straw came when I overheard Madison talking to Mom in the kitchen late one night. "I don't know why she's still living here at her age," Madison was saying. "Shouldn't she have her own place by now? I feel like she's just stuck in a rut, working that dead-end job, no boyfriend, no real life. She's clearly jealous of me." I expected Mom to defend me. Instead, she sighed. "Amber's always been the cautious one. Not adventurous like you." I retreated silently to my room, the familiar childhood pain of never measuring up flooding back. Despite my efforts to maintain peace, I could feel my resentment growing with each passing day. 2 weeks after Madison's arrival, I returned from a particularly grueling workday to find my bedroom door open. Confused, I stepped inside to discover my belongings missing, my bed stripped bare, my dresser emptied, my desk cleared. Panic rising, I rushed upstairs to find Madison arranging her things on my dresser. My clothes had been piled into cardboard boxes stacked against the wall. "What are you doing in my room?" I demanded. Madison turned, looking completely unsurprised. "Oh, Mom said you wouldn't mind relocating to the basement. I need more space for my stuff, and that little guest room is honestly claustrophobic. Besides, you're hardly ever home with your work schedule. You can't just move my things without asking me." My voice cracked with disbelief. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" Mom cleaned out the storage area in the basement. "There's a futon down there, and it's actually quite cozy. You'll have more privacy," Madison said, as if she'd done me a favor. I stormed downstairs to find Mom folding sheets in the basement, a damp, partially finished space where we stored holiday decorations and old furniture. She'd set up the ancient futon against one wall and placed a small lamp on a cardboard box serving as a nightstand. "Mom, what is this? Why would you move my things without even talking to me first?" Mom smoothed the sheets, avoiding eye contact. "Madison needs a proper bedroom, sweetie. The guest room is too small for all her things, and she's going through so much right now with her career transition." "Career transition?" "She was fired, Mom. She didn't come home for family support. She has nowhere else to go." Mom's expression hardened. "That's not true. Madison is taking a well-deserved break while considering her options. Several companies in LA are eager to hire her." "Did she tell you that?" "Because I overheard her on the phone, and that's not the story she was telling her friends." A tense silence filled the basement until Madison appeared at the top of the stairs. "I see Amber's having one of her jealous moments again," she called down. "Always trying to make me look bad." "I'm not jealous, I'm upset," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I live here too. I help pay the bills. I've been here for you, Mom, every day since Dad died. And this is how you treat me." "That's so manipulative," Madison interjected, descending the stairs. "Using Dad to make Mom feel guilty. Manipulative? You're the one who showed up unannounced after barely calling for 2 years, lied about why you're here, and somehow convinced Mom to turn me out of my room." Mom stepped between us. "Amber, that's enough. Madison is going through a difficult time, and she needs her space. You're always so independent. I thought you'd understand." "Understand what?" "That I'll always come second? That no matter what I do, Madison will always be the priority." Madison smirked. "Maybe if you had actually left home and built a real life like I did instead of playing it safe in your hometown, you'd have your own place, and this wouldn't be an issue." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. "You mean the real life that fell apart so completely you had to come running home? The one you're lying to Mom about right now?" "Girls, please," Mom pleaded. "Amber, Madison is staying indefinitely until she sorts out her situation in California. She needs a comfortable space. The basement is just temporary until we figure something out." "Indefinitely," I repeated. "And when were you planning to discuss this with me?" "There's nothing to discuss," Madison said. "Mom wants me here." I looked at Mom, waiting for her to correct Madison or at least acknowledge my position, but she simply looked away. "I've been helping financially and emotionally ever since Dad died," I said quietly to Mom. "I moved back home when you needed someone. Where was Madison then?" Madison's face flushed. "Oh, here we go with the martyr routine. Just because I built a career instead of hiding in my hometown doesn't mean I don't care about family. You abandoned us when Dad got sick. You were always working, always too busy. I was working to help pay the medical bills." I was shouting now, tears threatening. "I was at the hospital every night. You visited once for 2 days and then left before the funeral because you had an important meeting." What hurt most wasn't Madison's revisionist history, it was watching Mom nod along with her version of events, completely erasing my sacrifices. "That's not how I remember it," Mom said softly. "Madison called every day during your father's illness. She was devastated she couldn't be here more." I stared at them both, suddenly feeling like a stranger in my own home. Without another word, I grabbed my laptop and purse and headed upstairs. As I passed through the kitchen, I noticed a folder of my financial documents open on the counter, statements from my savings account and investment portfolio. The violation of privacy was the final confirmation of what I'd tried to deny for weeks. My own family saw me not as a daughter or sister, but as a convenience. A reliable source of financial and practical support to be used when needed and disregarded when not. 3 days after being relegated to the basement, I maintained a rigid schedule to minimize interaction with Madison and Mom. I left for work early, returned late, and spent evenings sealed away in my damp new bedroom, the distant sounds of laughter and conversation filtering down from above. On the 4th day, I came home earlier than usual. A migraine had forced me to leave work, and all I wanted was to lie down in the dark and silence. As I entered the house, voices from the living room made me pause. "It looks good on you," Mom was saying. "Your father would have wanted you to have it." My heart stopped when I stepped into the doorway. Madison was admiring her reflection in the small mirror above the fireplace, my father's watch glinting on her wrist. Not just any watch, the vintage Omega he'd inherited from his father and had explicitly promised to me on my 16th birthday. "What are you doing with Dad's watch?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. Both women turned, startled by my presence. Madison recovered first. "Mom gave it to me. Isn't it perfect? I can wear it with everything." I looked at Mom, waiting for an explanation, some acknowledgement of the significance of what she'd done. "Madison needed something special to remember her father by," Mom said, not quite meeting my eyes. "You have so many of his things already." "What things, Mom?" "You mean his collection of history books that I keep because he and I used to read them together? Or the coffee mug I use every morning because it was his favorite?" My voice grew stronger with each word. "That watch was promised to me. Dad told me it would be mine." "Well, your father isn't here to confirm that, is he?" Madison said dismissively, still admiring the watch. "Besides, it looks better with my style. You wouldn't wear something this nice to your boring office job." Something inside me, something that had been bending and bending for years, finally broke. "Take it off," I said quietly. "Excuse me." Madison raised an eyebrow. I said take it off. "That watch belongs to me. Dad promised it to me, and both of you know it." Madison laughed. "God, you're still such a child. Always whining about what's fair." "This isn't about fair, Madison. This is about respect for me, for Dad's wishes, for the promises made in this family." "But I shouldn't be surprised. You've never respected me." "Respected you?" Madison scoffed. "Why would I respect someone who's accomplished nothing? 30 years old and living in Mom's basement, working a mediocre job in a dying industry, no relationship, no real friends. What exactly should I be respecting?" Mom stood up. "Madison, that's enough." "No, Mom, she needs to hear this. She walks around acting superior because she stayed home like some kind of martyr. Meanwhile, I've built a real life. I've taken risks. I've experienced the world. And yet here you are," I said softly. "Jobless. Homeless. Lying to Mom about everything." "At least I tried," Madison shouted. "At least I didn't hide in this backward town pretending to be content with mediocrity. At least men actually find me attractive enough to date." Mom stepped between us. "Girls, please stop this. We're family." I turned to Mom, suddenly calm. "Are we?" "Because from where I stand, we're not a family at all. We're just two sisters competing for your attention and approval, and I've been losing that competition my entire life." "That's not true, Amber," Mom protested weakly. "Isn't it? When I moved back home after Dad died, I put my life on hold. I've been paying 70% of the household expenses. I've driven you to every doctor's appointment, fixed everything that's broken around here, and been your emotional support. And my reward? You give my bedroom and my father's prized possession to Madison within 2 weeks of her arrival." "Madison needs a fresh start," Mom said, her voice hardening unexpectedly. "She's going through a difficult time." "And what about me, Mom? What about what I need?" Mom took a deep breath. "What you need is to finally grow up. Madison is right. You've been hiding here, using taking care of me as an excuse to avoid living your own life. Maybe this is the push you need." She paused. "I think it's time for you to find your own place." The words hit like a physical blow. I looked from Mom to Madison, whose expression had shifted from anger to smug satisfaction. "You're kicking me out." My voice was barely audible. I'm suggesting it's time for a change, Mom said, not meeting my eyes. Madison needs a stable environment right now, and the tension between you two isn't healthy. You have 2 weeks to make arrangements. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. I had been holding onto the fantasy of a loving, supportive family that had never actually existed. All the times I'd made excuses for Mom's favoritism, all the times I'd forgiven Madison's cruelty, all the sacrifices I'd made in the name of family loyalty, none of it had mattered. Without another word, I turned and walked down to the basement, ignoring their calls behind me. In the damp solitude of my makeshift bedroom, I finally allowed myself to break down. I cried for the father I'd lost, for the mother who couldn't love both daughters equally, for the sister who saw me only as competition, and for the years I'd wasted trying to earn the approval of people who would never give it. When the tears finally subsided, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time in years, I saw my situation with perfect clarity. And I knew exactly what I needed to do. I slept very little that night, but the hours of darkness brought unexpected clarity. By dawn, I had formulated a plan that felt both liberating and terrifying. I would not wait 2 weeks for an artificial deadline. I would leave now, today, on my own terms. With methodical focus, I began packing my essential belongings while Mom and Madison still slept. I was surprised by how little I truly needed or wanted to take from this house. Clothes, personal documents, my laptop, a few books, and the small collection of family photos I kept, mainly of Dad and me. Everything fit into my car with room to spare. The most difficult decision was financial. I had been managing the household accounts since Dad's death, paying the majority of expenses from my own salary. There was $2,140 in the joint household account, of which I had contributed $1,700 for this month's mortgage and utilities. After careful consideration, I withdrew my portion, leaving enough to cover the immediate bills. It wasn't vindictive, just a clean break. By 7:30 a.m., I had nearly finished loading my car when Mom appeared in her bathrobe at the front door. "What are you doing?" she asked, watching me place the last box in my trunk. "I'm leaving," I replied calmly. "You want me out, so I'm out." I said 2 weeks, Amber. This is ridiculous. Is it? You made your choice pretty clear yesterday. I'm just respecting your wishes. Madison appeared behind Mom, looking considerably less polished than usual with her hair disheveled and yesterday's makeup smudged around her eyes. "Dramatic much? Where are you even going to go?" "That's no longer your concern," I said. "Either of you." Mom's expression shifted from annoyed to worried. "You can't just leave like this. We need to talk about the bills, the house responsibilities. I've withdrawn my portion of this month's contribution from our joint account. The mortgage and utilities are covered through the end of the month. After that, you and Madison will need to figure it out." For the first time, a flicker of panic crossed Madison's face. "What does that mean?" "It means I've been paying 70% of the household expenses since moving back home. The mortgage is $1,450 a month. Utilities average around $300. Property tax installment is due next month, that's $2,200. The roof needs replacing next year, that'll be about $8,000. Dad's life insurance money ran out last year." I delivered these facts without emotion, like a business presentation. Mom's face had gone pale. "You know I'm only working part-time." "I can't." "That's for you to figure out now," I interrupted gently. "Maybe Madison's connections in LA will come through with a high-paying remote job." Madison's eyes narrowed. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Leaving Mom in the lurch to punish me." I shook my head. "This isn't about punishment, Madison. It's about finally recognizing a toxic situation and removing myself from it. I've been enabling both of you for too long." I walked past them into the house one last time, heading directly to Madison's room, my former bedroom. On her dresser sat Dad's watch. I picked it up, feeling its familiar weight. "You can't take that," Madison protested, following me. "Mom gave it to me. Actually, Dad gave it to me. I have his handwritten note from my 16th birthday promising it as my inheritance." I slipped the watch into my pocket. "This is the one thing I won't leave behind." Mom tried a different approach, her voice softening into the cajoling tone she'd always used when trying to get her way. "Sweetie, you're overreacting. We can work this out. I was upset yesterday, but I didn't mean you had to leave immediately." "Yes, you did," I replied. "You meant every word. The only difference is you expected me to beg to stay, to remind you how much you need me, to fall back into our dysfunctional pattern. But I'm choosing something different now." I headed for the door, then turned back one last time. "I've called my friend Claire. She's offered me her spare room until I find my own place. If you need to reach me, you can call my cell, but I won't be answering texts or calls for a few days. I need some space to process everything." Madison's confident facade had completely crumbled. You can't just walk out on family. The irony of her statement, coming from someone who had done exactly that for years, would have made me laugh if it weren't so sad. Family is more than blood, Madison. It's showing up. It's sacrifice. It's mutual respect. We've never had that, and I'm done pretending we do. With that, I walked out the door, got in my car, and drove away without looking back. In my rearview mirror, I could see them standing in the doorway, looking suddenly small and uncertain. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe freely. The weight of constantly seeking approval from people who would never give it had finally lifted. As I navigated the familiar streets of my hometown toward Claire's apartment, I felt something unexpected blossoming inside me. Not anger or vindication, but hope for a future defined by my own choices rather than others' expectations. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I had no illusions that this break would be clean or easy. Years of emotional patterns don't disappear overnight. But I had taken the first step toward a healthier life, and for now, that was enough. Claire's guest room was small but bright, with a window overlooking a quiet courtyard. After years of living in my childhood home, the unfamiliar space felt both strange and freeing. Claire, my friend since college, asked few questions when I arrived with my hastily packed belongings. She simply hugged me, helped carry my boxes, and made up the bed with fresh sheets. "Stay as long as you need," she said, placing a spare key on the nightstand. "I'm usually at the hospital for 12-hour shifts, so you'll have plenty of space to yourself." That first evening, we sat on her balcony with glasses of wine as I finally unburdened myself, telling her everything that had happened. Claire, with her characteristic directness, didn't offer platitudes or force optimism. "Your mother and sister sound toxic as hell," she said simply. "I'm proud of you for walking away." The next morning, I called my office and requested a week of personal leave. My boss, who had witnessed my dedication through countless late nights and weekend work sessions, approved it without hesitation. "Take care of yourself, Amber. We've got things covered here." Those first few days were a jumble of contradictory emotions. Moments of liberating peace would suddenly give way to crushing guilt. Years of conditioning had taught me that I was responsible for my mother's happiness and stability. Breaking free of that mindset proved harder than I expected. I found a therapist through Claire's recommendation, Dr. Levine, a compassionate woman with a no-nonsense approach that suited me. In our first session, she helped me identify the dysfunctional patterns that had defined my family relationships for decades. "What you're describing is a classic family system with rigid roles," she explained. "You've been the responsible caretaker, while your sister plays the role of the special, entitled child. Your mother enables these dynamics because they serve her emotional needs." "But why?" I asked. "Why couldn't she just love us equally?" Dr. Levine's expression softened. "That's the question most children never get answered. Sometimes parents replicate their own childhood experiences. Sometimes they're working through their own unresolved issues. What matters now is recognizing that you didn't cause this dynamic, you can't control it, and you can't cure it." By the fourth day, my phone had accumulated dozens of missed calls and texts from both Mom and Madison. I read them but didn't respond, following Dr. Levine's advice to maintain space until I felt emotionally stable enough to engage without being pulled back into old patterns. Mom's messages started with anger. "I can't believe you would just abandon us like this," before transitioning to guilt, "after everything I've done for you," and finally to anxiety. "Please just let me know you're safe." Madison's followed a similar trajectory, but with more overt manipulation, Mom is falling apart because of what you did. On the 6th day, I received a text that made my stomach drop. The power company called about an overdue bill. The account is in your name. Please call me back, Mom. I hadn't considered this complication. When I'd moved back home, I'd put several utilities in my name to help rebuild Mom's credit after Dad's medical bills had devastated their finances. With a sinking feeling, I checked my email and found notices from the electric company, internet provider, and water utility, all warning of imminent service interruptions due to non-payment. I called the companies and made minimum payments to prevent shutoffs, adding payment plans for the rest. It was money I couldn't really spare, but the alternative, having services disconnected in my name, damaging my credit score, was worse. Later that day, Madison's increasingly desperate texts revealed the full picture. The refrigerator is making a weird noise and Mom doesn't know who to call. Where do you keep the property tax statements? There's a late notice. Do you have the password for the home insurance website? They're saying the policy lapsed. The reality was setting in for both of them. I hadn't just been a daughter and sister living at home. I had been the household manager, financial planner, and problem solver. Without me, the careful systems I'd put in place were quickly unraveling. A full week after my departure, my office phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Amber Wilson speaking. Amber, thank God. Madison's voice was uncharacteristically frantic. I've been trying to reach you for days. I needed some space, I said evenly. What do you want, Madison? It's Mom. She's completely falling apart. She can't sleep, she's barely eating, she keeps saying she's failed as a mother. You need to come home and tell her it's okay. That's not my responsibility anymore. Mom made her choice when she decided to kick me out. She didn't mean it like that. She was just what? Just prioritizing your needs over mine for the 1000th time? Just assuming I'd forgive her like I always do. Look, I know I've been difficult, Madison said, her voice softening. But this isn't about me. It's about Mom. She needs you. And what about what I need, Madison? Has either of you ever considered that? The line went silent for a moment. Then, with audible effort, Madison said, You're right. We haven't. I haven't. But I'm asking you now, please, just talk to her. I'll think about it, I said and ended the call. Later that afternoon, my company's receptionist called. Amber, there's someone here to see you. She says she's your sister. Should I send her up? My heart raced. No, tell her I'll come down. In the lobby, Madison looked nothing like her usual polished self. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her face bare of makeup, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a plain sweater. What are you doing here, Madison? I asked, keeping my distance. I need to talk to you. Please, just give me 5 minutes. We walked to a nearby coffee shop and sat at an outside table. Madison fidgeted with her paper cup, struggling to find words, something I'd never seen before. Mom got a foreclosure warning today, she finally said. Apparently, the mortgage hasn't been paid for 2 months. I frowned. That's impossible. I paid May's mortgage before I left, and April's was definitely paid. Well, the bank says otherwise. And there's more. The property taxes are overdue, the homeowner's insurance lapsed, and the credit card bills are piling up. Mom's completely overwhelmed. And where's your contribution to all this? You've been living there rent-free for nearly a month now. Madison looked down. I don't exactly have resources right now. You mean you're broke? I had some investments that didn't pan out. And my savings went toward covering expenses in LA after I lost my job. Which you still haven't told Mom the truth about, have you? Madison's silence was answer enough. So let me get this straight, I continued. You came back home because you were fired and broke. You lied to Mom about it. You manipulated her into giving you my bedroom and kicking me out. And now that you're facing the consequences of your actions, you expect me to swoop in and fix everything. I didn't expect any of this to happen, Madison said quietly. I didn't realize how much you were actually handling. That's because you never bothered to ask or notice. You just assumed Mom was taking care of everything, when in reality, I was taking care of Mom. The conversation ended with no resolution. Madison left with the household financial documents I'd brought from my files, promising to figure things out. I returned to my office, shaken but oddly clearer about my boundaries. 2 days later, my boss called me into her office. Amber, I've been meaning to talk to you about an opportunity. Our New York office is looking for a senior marketing strategist to lead their financial services team. It would be a significant promotion, with a 30% salary increase. I recommended you. The timing felt almost cosmic, a chance to make a clean break, to start fresh in a new city where I wouldn't be defined by my family role. The interview was scheduled for the following week via video conference. That evening, when I shared the news with Claire, she raised her glass in celebration. New York. This is exactly what you need. It feels like running away, I admitted. It's not running away if you're running towards something better, Claire countered. You've spent years of your life supporting your mom and dealing with your sister's drama. Maybe it's finally time for Amber. As I considered her words, my phone lit up with a text from Mom. Please come home. We need to talk. Just talk. No pressure. After 2 weeks of distance and reflection, I felt strong enough to face them without being pulled back into old patterns. I texted back, tomorrow, 2 p.m. I'll come by to pick up the rest of my things. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. I would never again allow myself to be the family scapegoat or doormat. Whether I took the New York position or stayed in Boston, my days of sacrificing my well-being for people who didn't value it were over. 2 months after walking out of my childhood home, I stood in my new apartment on the 23rd floor of a high-rise in Manhattan, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in shades of gold and pink. The space was small by suburban standards, but felt expansive with possibility. Floor-to-ceiling windows, hardwood floors, and my carefully curated furniture created a haven that was entirely mine. The senior marketing strategist position at Lambert & Associates had been challenging but invigorating. My new colleagues respected my expertise, my ideas were valued, and for the first time in my career, I felt I could grow without limitation. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder, flight to Boston tomorrow, 10 a.m. I had scheduled this trip weeks ago, blocking the entire weekend to finally collect the remainder of my belongings from Mom's house. Though we'd spoken briefly on the phone a few times, I hadn't been back since that final confrontation. That day had been a reckoning none of us were fully prepared for. When I arrived at the house, the first thing I noticed was the unkempt yard, Dad's meticulously maintained garden now overgrown with weeds, the grass uncut. Inside, the house had a neglected air, mail piled on the entry table, dishes in the sink, a fine layer of dust on the furniture. Mom looked smaller somehow, the confident authority figure of my childhood diminished by circumstances she hadn't anticipated. Madison sat beside her at the kitchen table, a stack of bills and notices spread between them. The bank called again. Mom began without preamble. They're moving forward with foreclosure proceedings. We have 60 days to bring the mortgage current. I set my purse down. I thought Madison was handling the finances now. Madison's eyes flashed with familiar defensiveness before something shifted in her expression. I tried. I really did. But it's a mess, Amber. I don't know how you managed it all these years. How much are you behind? 3 months of mortgage payments now. Plus the property tax installment and home insurance premium. About $7,000 total to bring everything current. I nodded, processing this information with unexpected detachment. Just weeks ago, this crisis would have sent me into a panic, scrambling to fix everything at any personal cost. Now, I felt capable of empathy without assuming responsibility. That's a difficult situation, I said carefully. What's your plan? Mom looked up, confusion evident in her expression. She'd clearly expected me to offer a solution. We were hoping, that is, I thought perhaps you might help us figure this out. You've always been so good with these things. I can give you advice, I offered, but I won't be taking over the finances again. That's no longer my role. Madison surprised me by nodding. That's fair. More than fair, actually. As the conversation continued, Madison revealed the full extent of her situation. She hadn't just been fired, she'd been let go after a company restructuring eliminated her entire department. Her flashy LA lifestyle had been financed primarily through credit cards, which were now maxed out. She had been subletting her apartment, which was now lost since she couldn't afford to renew the lease. "I'm not proud of how I handled things," she admitted, not quite meeting my eyes. I was embarrassed and scared. Coming home was supposed to be temporary until I got back on my feet, but then, I don't know. It was easier to fall into old patterns. To let mom baby me and pretend everything was fine. And to push me out in the process, I added. Madison nodded, a flash of genuine regret crossing her face. "I was jealous of you, Amber. You've always had your life together. Even when you moved back home, it was a choice you made from strength, not desperation like me. It was easier to tear you down than admit I'd failed." Mom reached for my hand across the table. I enabled all of it. "I've always favored Madison, made excuses for her behavior. Your father used to call me on it, but after he died." Her voice broke. It was easier to continue the pattern than face what I was doing. The acknowledgement I'd waited decades to hear landed with surprising gentleness. There was no vindication, no triumph, just the sad recognition of years wasted in dysfunctional dynamics. "I'm not moving back," I said firmly. "And I can't solve this financial crisis for you. But I can help you create a realistic budget and action plan." For the next several hours, we worked through their finances. Madison had found a job at a local marketing agency, a significant step down from her director position, but a start. Mom had increased her hours at the community center. Together, their income still fell short of what was needed to maintain the house. "You might need to consider selling," I suggested gently. "This house is too big for two people, and the maintenance costs will only increase as it ages." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "This is where you girls grew up. Where your father and I built our life. The memories don't live in the walls, Mom. They live in us." By the time I left that day, we had developed a plan. They would attempt to negotiate with the bank for a loan modification. If that failed, they would prepare to sell the house and find a more affordable living situation. I agreed to pay 1 month of the mortgage, not as a bailout, but as a cushion to give them time to implement their plan. As I was leaving, Madison followed me to my car. "I have something for you." She held out Dad's watch, carefully wrapped in soft cloth. "This belongs to you. I found Dad's note in his desk drawer. He was really specific about wanting you to have it." I accepted it with a nod. "Thank you." "I know an apology isn't enough," Madison continued. "But I am sorry, Amber. For everything. I hope someday we might actually be real sisters, not just two people who grew up in the same house." "That would take time and consistent change," I said honestly. "Not just words." "I know. I'm working on it. In therapy, actually," she added with a self-deprecating smile. "Turns out being the favorite child screws you up too, just differently." Now, standing in my New York apartment the day before returning to Boston, I held Dad's watch in my hand. I'd had it cleaned and serviced, the aged leather band replaced with a new one. It kept perfect time, a tangible connection to the father who had seen me clearly when others hadn't. I had left the watch with a letter before departing after that final confrontation. In it, I'd written about what the watch truly symbolized, not just a valuable possession, but Dad's recognition of my responsibility and reliability, qualities he'd valued and nurtured in me when Mom and Madison had often dismissed them. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Mom made up the guest room for you. Your actual old room, not the basement. Let me know when your flight lands." The relationship with my family remained complicated. 2 months couldn't undo a lifetime of patterns. Mom still sometimes slipped into enabling behavior with Madison. Madison still had moments of entitlement and self-centeredness. I still sometimes felt the pull of my caretaker role. The difference now was awareness. We were all trying, in our imperfect ways, to create healthier interactions. Weekly family therapy sessions via video call helped us navigate the new boundaries and expectations. Sometimes they were productive, other times they ended in frustrated tears. But we kept showing up, which was its own kind of progress. As for me, the journey from people-pleaser to self-advocate continued daily. Sometimes I felt guilty for prioritizing my needs. Sometimes I overcompensated with rigid boundaries. But with each day in my new life, each small decision made from a place of self-respect rather than obligation, I grew more comfortable in my own skin. I had learned that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting. That love doesn't demand sacrifice. That family can be both the source of our deepest wounds and the space where healing begins. Most importantly, I discovered that walking away from toxic relationships, even temporarily, can sometimes be the only path to potentially rebuilding them on healthier terms. My new circle of friends in New York knew nothing of my family dynamics or past role as the reliable, invisible daughter. They simply knew me as Amber, confident, capable, occasionally vulnerable, but never a doormat. This fresh perspective helped me see myself more clearly and kindly. As I packed my overnight bag for tomorrow's flight, I felt neither dread nor anxiety about seeing Mom and Madison. Instead, I felt something like cautious hope, not for perfect resolution, but for continued growth. The path forward wouldn't be straight or simple, but for the first time, it would be authentically mine to choose. What's your story of setting boundaries with family? Have you ever had to walk away from toxic relationships to preserve your mental health? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about navigating complicated family dynamics. Remember that prioritizing your well-being isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thank you for listening, and I hope you find the strength to create the life you deserve, surrounded by people who genuinely value you.